Okay, so welcome back, everyone. In discussing our situation here with software with my department chair, we have decided that we are going to, she is also having problems with students not being able to access the software. People are being able to log in, but the problem is that it's crashing, it's slow, and so it's causing a whole big bag of hurt for everybody. So for those that have InDesign on their systems, for those of you that have purchased it, or maybe have had it on your computers before, we are going to continue teaching InDesign. However, if you do not have InDesign and you couldn't get in and it's slow and you just don't know what to do now, you can't afford to pay for it, we're going to use Canva program, internet-based program, web-based program called Canva. I used this last semester right before we were all sent home during the COVID crisis. And it seemed to work out fairly well. It is not InDesign, though, but it does a lot of things, and that's what I want to kind of show you today. I'm not going to demonstrate it today. In fact, I've got another video up for you to watch. If you are not going to be using InDesign, then I'm going to ask you to watch the Canva video. Also, even though you do have InDesign, you might want to watch this video anyway because it's a really cool program. It does a lot of things. It's very easy, very intuitive to learn. I really like it, honestly. I mean, it does a lot of things that I like better than InDesign, but it's not as professional as InDesign, and it does not handle very complex documents like InDesign does. So not to, don't mistake the fact that InDesign is still the premier program in page layout. But I do want to give those of you that can't use it an opportunity to still take this class and to still accomplish things. And Canva is a pretty solid program that we can use for these assignments. So with that, I think that's the decision that we've made, that we are going to teach both platforms. Now, what that's going to require, though, or what it's going to, how it's going to affect this class is that I'm going to be giving demonstrations not only in InDesign, but now in Canva. I wasn't planning on doing that, but just to be fair so that everybody can do this, I will do that. So today's lesson is going to be on InDesign, and Monday's lesson is going to be on Canva. We still have to get up to speed in both of these programs in order to start doing things. And I'm teaching this at a very introductory level because this is a beginning class, so I don't want to assume that you know anything about anything. If you do, great, bear with me. But if you don't, I will go as slow as possible in this. So I'm going to jump right in. I've got till 10:50 where I'm going to stop the class at 10:50. So let me jump right in and just get to what we're going to do. Our first assignment is going to be to put together a what's called a kiosk. And this kiosk, let me share my screen first of all, and let me pull up InDesign because I already created it in InDesign. And what you're seeing is a layout for a kiosk that would be printed in, from a commercial printer. These would be located in, say, a zoo. So if you visited your local zoo and you walked around, Maybe this kiosk is right in front of the brown bear, you know, or maybe you went to Yellowstone and there was a kiosk as you walked around the park. If you went to a zoo, maybe there's kiosks like this or little signage. We see this all the time uh, as you're looking into the area where the bears are. It falls under a category of what's called environmental graphics. And environmental graphics is a very exciting form of graphics because it's you'll see this in museums, any local trip to the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles or any of the museums here, the Getty, you're constantly seeing signage and communications, graphic communications, talking about stories of artists or stories of bears or stories of, you know, dinosaurs or whatever. And they're very well designed. And this is something that you would do in a program like InDesign or Photoshop or, you know, number of programs you could do this in, but we're going to do it in InDesign. And as I give out assignments in my classes, I always like to kind of set up a scenario because I think it's really important for all of you studying graphic design to understand that everything that we do in graphic design has to perform a function. We're not fine artists. We're not just like creating art and throwing it out there. What we do is we create communications for companies, for clients, and they all have a purpose, a goal that it's, you know, something that it is supposed to achieve. And so we always define graphic design projects as problems. And if I switch over here back to this assignment, the assignment is going to be called a zoo kiosk display. And in this Zoom lecture here that you logged into, you'll see in this lecture we're going to discuss the course direction moving forward, which we just did, the introduction to Canva, which I just mentioned, and discussing a design problem. And that's what I'm talking about. The problem here would be that we are designers, and let's say we're working for the Getty Museum or the LA County Zoo or whatever. Or let's say we work in a design firm where they're hiring us out. They give us information, they tell us what their project is, what they want accomplished, and we look at it as a problem. And so when they tell us that we are to design this kiosk or this signage, we ask them lots of questions, and we talked about the process the other day. We talked about what the process is that designers go through from the initial client meeting all the way to the very end where we are delivering the actual artwork. And the problem here is fairly simple. Let's say they come to us and they say, well, we want you to design signage that, you know, gives the viewer a scenario of what brown bears are, you know, some of the history of them, maybe what, you know, the typical size and weight, so that when they walk up to this area, they have some information. I also put a map in here, and I also put an area here that shows where you can see brown bears in Yellowstone Park. Now, I just kind of made this up, but in other words, this kind of pink area here is where the most concentration of brown bears are, let's say, in Yellowstone, so that it gives the tourist an opportunity to go there and see it. It starts off with a heading that says the brown bears of Yellowstone, and let's say this text is, you know, some verbiage that the client gave us that they want said in the sign. And then maybe a photograph that they supplied to us. Many times, in fact, most times, clients will supply photography. They might even supply illustration. Then again, if the design firm is well-versed in photography, if they are photographers, and many design firms employ photographers now. A lot of graphic designers are photographers. And so if you have photography background, it's a good plus to have as a graphic designer these days. But let's say they supplied us a photograph that they wanted us to use, and we might have to go into Photoshop and fix it up, or Lightroom or whatever, and use that. And this map here, let's say they supplied us the map, or let's say they're asking us to create the map. And this is a type of project that we would create in a program like Adobe Illustrator. That would be a great program to create maps, because they're basically vector graphics and hard lines and curves, and this is perfect to. You can also do this in InDesign. But in any event, the elements that we're using in this sign are images, photographic images, a graphic image of a map, and typography on a background of some sort, and we're designing the look and the layout of how these things all come together. In graphic design, if you took my graphic design class, we would talk more about the process of how to approach this. Remember, what you're seeing now is already done. Normally, when a client gives you something, there's nothing to see because nothing has been created yet. So you have to create this look from scratch. Now, how do you do that? How do you even go about coming up with something like this? And this is by no means the only way to do this. There are a zillion ways, as there are designers. There is many ways to lay things out as there are designers out there that have ideas. So this was an idea that I had of doing this, but yours may be different. But in this case, where do we start? And we always start with sketches. And I showed you sketches the other day, kind of thumbnail sketches of, how we approach things. And so I'm going to switch back, or I'm going to switch back to my camera here, or show you. And I think I showed this, and I know this is a very crude way of showing this to you, but little thumbnail layouts of how this might look. Now, when we're doing these things, we don't, we're designing, we're laying things out, we're trying different things. And before we go to the computer, we want to have a pretty good idea of what it is we want to do, layout-wise, size-wise, and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean that whatever you sketch is what you have to do. There's lots of things that are going to change once you get your elements in the computer and start playing around with them. Like, this bear here, you might say, gee, I want the bear, maybe I want this bear smaller. So you'll take your, tools, and you will maybe make that bear smaller and maybe put it over here. Okay, and look at that, evaluate it, and say, yeah, I don't know, I don't like that. I like it back the other way. Okay, so there's lots of layout things that are going to change once you get things in the computer, but you want to have a good solid place to start. You might want to have different looks, different ideas on how to lay this out, so that you can propose to your client maybe 3 or 4 different ways that this might look. You have a much better chance of a client agreeing on something if they see, say, 3 or 4 different layouts, rather than if they just see one. And I want to emphasize that too, because so many times in graphic design, we show them one idea and they look at us and they go, well, that's not really working. And that means you got to go back to the drawing board. You've got to redo it, more time. You're not getting paid for it. So it's a waste, kind of, your hourly rate is starting to decrease at that point. So you want to really be, have a good chance of your designs getting approved. And doing several is a good way of approaching that. But rather than talking too much about that, I want to jump right into how we would create this. Okay, so if we broke this down into the basic elements, We have a bear, an image, we have typography, and we have this graphic map, and we have a couple of, backgrounds here. We have a brown background here, and we have this kind of mauve colored, background. So let's say this mauve colored square is the actual sign dimensions. Okay, that is the edges of the sign itself. And let's say this is made out of a plastic material, or you know um, uh, gator foam, or I don't know what. In museums, a lot of times they'll use softer materials, but if this was outdoors, this would be a very weather resistant material. This brown box here is another graphic element, and then the bear, and then the text, and then the map, and then this little circle here, which if I click on this circle and I move this away, you can see that all that is just a circle with reduced opacity that was put anywhere on this map. I mean, the area to see bears could be over here. So I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just put it there. Okay, so anyway, client would give us all this information. So let's put this together in InDesign. And then on Monday, I'm going to show you, for those of you that can't use InDesign, I'm going to show you how to do this in Canva. But I do want you to watch this video over the weekend, the Canva video, and I'll show you where that is. I'll post that. Okay, so here we are in InDesign. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to File, and we're going to open up a new document. And this document happens to be 10 inches wide by 10 inches wide. This could be, obviously 10 inches is not a big signage, I mean, it'd probably be something like maybe 36 by 36. But we'll use 10 by 10 for now. So File, New, Document. And I'm going to go to actually, you can plug in the sizes here. If this says picas, just go ahead and make it, click on this arrow here and make it inches. And then I'm just going to go 10, hit the tab key, and 10. The tab key on InDesign allows you to cycle through all of these different fields here. So if you want to get to another field quick, just hit the tab key. The amount of pages is 1. It's not going to be facing pages. I'm going to click off of that, and margins will keep at half-inch margins. Remember, everything is digital in InDesign. There's no such thing as 1/2 for a half-inch. It's all digital. So if you need 1/8 margins, then it's going to be 0.125. And so forth. And you can find out the digital equivalent. That's easy to do. And then we're going to create this document. So I'm just going to leave it at 1 column, create the document, and we should have a 10 by 10 square that comes out. And there it is. And what I'm going to do is minimize this so we don't see that. And then we talked about the other day, you guys, if those of you that are using InDesign, to set up your palette configurations like mine, and that's Essentials Classic. So you'll go to Essentials Classic, and if you need to reset Essentials Classic, then reset it, and it'll come out looking exactly like this. We also did mention that you might not have swatches out here. And if you don't have swatches, you can find it under the window menu. You'll see it down here under swatches. Just click, drag it out, and dock it in your palettes over here. Now, one of the things that InDesign has that Canva will not have is layers. And it's, that's just basic for most programs. Most professional programs will always give you layers. Canva doesn't really give you layers. I haven't really looked into Canva deeply, but I don't believe it gives you layers. In this case, for InDesign, we would probably want to use layers, but I'm going to build this without layers just to show you some other features. Okay, but normally we would want to build with layers based on each item. So in other words, the background would be a layer, this brown box might be a layer, and then the bear would be a separate layer, and the type would be a separate layer. So the bear and the map Usually I put images on one layer, backgrounds I put on another layer, and then typography I put on a third layer. So at minimum, I am regularly using about 3 layers. And I call them graphics, images, and typography. Okay, but we'll just use one layer for this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is uh, lay in a background. And I'm going to go to the rectangle tool up here and select the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to put this crosshair right in the corner, in the upper left corner, click and drag it to the length of the document. And then I'm going to pull out my swatches and select a color. Okay, now the default swatches only gives you these kind of primary colors here. And I don't really want any of these primary colors. So I'm going to create a color on my own. Instead of using one of these colors, I'm going to create another color. So I'm going to come over to the swatch over here, okay, in the toolbar. And remember we talked about the single toolbar versus the double palette toolbar, the double row toolbar. So I use the double row toolbar. What I'm going to do first is click on the stroke. We have 2 attributes of an object. Whenever we draw an object, there's always a fill and a stroke. Okay, and the stroke is the outline around it, and the fill is obviously the color that fills it. So I'm going to take this stroke, and notice when I click the fill, it comes forward. When I click the stroke, that comes forward. I'm going to click the stroke and make it none. Okay, so there's no fill and no stroke right now to this box. We know the box is selected because we see the little handles around this box. I'm going to click the fill, and I'm going to double click on the fill, and that brings me the color picker. Anytime you double click on the fill icon, you'll get the color picker, and now you're able to choose any color you want. And it gives you kind of the color wheel in different stages. Okay, I can move this up, and you can see how the colors change in the color view space. Now this is a little bit harder to kind of wrap your head around than Canva. Canva, you're going to see colors are pretty intuitive. You know, you'll find it, you pick it, done. But in InDesign, it gets very technical. It gives you all of these different kind of color modes to use: RGB, lab, CMYK. For now, we're just going to kind of pick a, I think it was like a mauve color. Yeah, I'm not going to get too particular about this. So I'm just going to kind of go in this area here. Okay. And as you fish around here, you can see that the colors change. So as I move this around, you can see how the colors will reflect where my cursor is on this. And I'm just going to kind of move into, let's say, I'm not going to get it exactly. So let's just kind of move in here, say around there. Okay. I'm going to add this CMYK swatch. That's what the color mode is, CMYK. I'm going to add the CMYK to my swatches palette here, so I'll see it here. So I'm going to add CMYK swatch, and you'll see that show up here in my swatches palette. So if I need to use this color again, it's always there in my swatches palette. It also filled this box. So I'll click OK, and I've got that done. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is draw another box. I'm going to click off and get on my selection tool. And again, to move something, you just click in it and move it. To undo, Command Z. Okay, that's your undo key. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool again, and I'm just going to draw another box. Let me just double check this. Okay, so this, I'm going to draw this brown box now. Okay, and it's not as big, obviously, as the background box. So let me just kind of click and drag. So I have this box now, and I'm going to fill it with, let's say, a brown color. Okay, so again, I'm going to go take my outline off, double click my fill tool, and I'm going to go look for a brown color. And I know brown is kind of in the yellow area, you know, where you see yellows. me go up here. And I'm going to click in here and I'm going to kind of come down. That's too red. Okay, so I have to move this. I know the value of this is going to be kind of dark. So now I'll just move this around until I get kind of a brownish color. All right, so there's kind of a brown color right there. I don't know if that's exactly what I want, but as I move down, it gets darker. So I'll add that to my CMYK swatch and click OK. Right, so now I have this kind of mauve color back here, this brown color, and I will kind of move this in the layout. I'm just clicking on it and moving it. And I'll lay that down about right there. Now, the nice thing about InDesign is that as you move your object, you see that little magenta line that pops out right there in the middle, coming straight down? That tells you that it's centered. Okay, it's centered horizontal, side to side. Now, if I move this down a little bit and I see another line come out, let's say a horizontal there. So now I have a horizontal line and a vertical line that come out, guides. They're kind of called smart guides. Okay, and they tell you where your object is and positioned. So now I know that this brown square is positioned exactly centered into this background. Now you notice how I still see my margins here? If I hit the W key on my keyboard, the W key, that toggles all of your guides and margins off. So this is what it's going to look like when it prints. But when you hit the W key, it gives you your guidelines when you're working. So if you need to align things, if you need to bring guides over from the ruler and place them in certain spots so you can align things and position things, then you want to be on this working mode. But if you hit the W key, it erases everything. So you see it nice and clean. If ever you want to delete a guide, just click on the guide. And see, the problem here is that I'm clicking on this this page and the background keeps selecting. Click on the guide and just delete it. Okay, so that's an easy way to delete your guides. Okay, so now that I have this box in and this background in, I'm going to bring the bear in. Okay, now the bear I'm going to give you in terms of the image. I'm not going to have you knock out the background because the background's already knocked out. So I'm going to give you this bear, and you're going to download it from Canvas. Okay, so when you go to Canvas, when we start this assignment, and we're not starting it now, we're going to start it next week. But when you go to Canvas and you go under assignments here, and you see this zoo kiosk display, which I'll publish and it'll be available to you. Okay, I still have to write some more information on it. But you will see this bear and Yellowstone map, PNG. Just click on these, it'll download to your computer, put it in a folder in your hard drive, and then when you're in InDesign or in Canva, you're going to import it into your file. So in this case with InDesign, the way we import an object, a photo or an illustration or anything, when we import, we actually place it. So I'm going to go up to File and Place, and the shortcut key is Command D. Very easy. You'll memorize this. It's not too intuitive though, because D has nothing to do with import or place. But anyway, it's place. And we'll go find where that bear is. And on my computer, it's under the Macintosh hard drive, under me, under SBVC, under Fall, under R149, R148, under Assignments, and under Brown Bear Kiosk. And voila, there is the Brown Bear PNG. Okay. Now you won't have to go through a myriad of all those folders because yours will be probably pretty simple. But there's the bear, and now I'm going to open it. Okay. Now I get this loaded up icon here. It's ready for me to place. And there's a couple of ways we can place it. I can just click and it just spits it out, actual size, or I can click and drag and position it or place it to about the size I want it. And so that's the method that I'm going to use, is I'm going to use a click and drag way of placing. So I'm going to grab, I'm going to kind of go to the corner here. I'm going to click and drag a box out, okay? And you can see that that box is in the same aspect ratio as the bear. I can't make it skinnier or wider. It just makes it whatever proportion it is. And when I let go, there's the bear. Okay, and the background has already been removed. I removed the background in Photoshop. Unfortunately, if you can't use the Adobe software, we are not going to be able to get into Photoshop because that's part of Adobe. So I will give you images already knocked out in Photoshop. Okay, now I want to place this bear. If I look at my kind of guide here, I can see that the bear kind of sticks out of this box. It kind of sticks out below the box and off to the left side of the box. This box looks smaller than the box that I have. So what I'm going to do is select this box and just grab this and bring it in a little bit. Okay, so it's not as, maybe move this over a little bit. And then I'm going to grab the bear. I'm going to select the bear photo and click and kind of, oh, this is where layers really help, because every time you click on something, you always click the wrong thing. But I'm going to click the bear, and then I'm going to click on it, hold for a minute, and that way I can see the bear move, and I'll kind of position that bear, let's say around here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll hit my W key so I get rid of all of these guidelines and boxes, and that's where I am. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in and set the text. Okay, so the text is going to say the brown bears of Yellowstone, and then there's going to be a small block of text down here. So I'm just going to watch my time here. It's 10:32, so I'm good. Okay, I'm going to grab the text tool now, and I'm going to kind of draw a text box that's approximately the size that I want it. So with the text tool, I'm going to kind of click and drag a text box. Okay, remember in InDesign, you have to create a text box before you start typing. In Canva, it's kind of the same way, but this is where I like Canva a little bit better for doing simple things like this. Okay, so I selected the text tool, I drew a text box, I get my flashing cursor here prompting me to text. I know that when I look at this, my alignment is align left. Okay, see how all of these three lines align to the left? I also have centered, I have align right, I have justified. Okay, these are all your alignments up here. But in this case, I'm going to use align left, and I'm going to type the brown. Let's see, how many lines was that? It was the brown bears of Yellowstone. Okay, so the brown, second line, I'm going to hit return. Second line is the brown bears of, and then the third line is going to be Yellowstone. Okay, now I'm not really concerned about what type size this is or what color it is, because I'm going to change it anyway. I think we talked about installing fonts in InDesign in the last class, but you don't necessarily have, I'm not going to be too concerned about you using the exact typeface. If you want to use that typeface, it's called Chunk 5, and you can download that from dafont.com. But I'm going to highlight these three lines here, and I'm going to go change the typeface here to Chunk 5. Okay, so there it is. And then I'm going to also change, with this highlighted, I'm going to change the color of this font to paper. Okay, which will actually make it the color white. I'm going to go up to my size indicator up here. This is my type size, and I'm going to choose something much larger than 12 points. So let's try 36 points. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Maybe it's 40 points. Let's see if 40 points fits. You can highlight up here and just type it in if you want, 40, and then hit return. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. But notice how the lines have too much space in between them, okay? That looks terrible, okay? And the space between lines is in typography is called leading. And that's what this field is right here. The field below the typeface, or I'm sorry, the point size. So again, I have to highlight my text. In order to change anything in InDesign, you always have to highlight. I should have done this in layers, really. You have to highlight the text, and then you can change any attribute of it. You can change the typeface, the size, whatever. But if it's not highlighted, nothing's going to happen. So I'm going to go over here to my leading. And right now, the size of the type is 40, and the leading is 45. We know that's too much. So I'm going to actually go here and make the leading less than the size of the type. Okay, so I'm going to try 38. And click return. And that tightens up this leading here. And that's looking much better. So if I look at that, okay, that's a better setting of that headline. I'm going to just take my type box and make it a little bit tidier. I don't need all this space at the bottom or off to the side. And now I'm going to click in this type box, click and hold, and kind of roughly place where I want this text to go. Okay, right about there, click off, hit my W key, and now I have that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And, you know, just for the sake of not having to deal with this, I should set this up on layers. And so I'm going to do that right now. Otherwise, it's going to get really tough to start selecting things. So I'm going to go to layers here. And I'm going to start creating a few layers. I'm going to go to my layers palette, and I'm going to come down here to create new layer. And right now I have just one layer, and it's blue. That means that every time I click on something, it has a blue box around it. That means that it's on this layer. So I'm going to click another layer, a red layer, and a green layer. Okay. Now I'm going to call this bottom layer here. I'm going to click on it and click again. And I'm going to call this background. Okay. Now I'm going to click on the second layer here. Click once and then click again. And I'm going to call this layer type. So this is all my type is going to go on this layer. And then I'm going to click on this third layer up here. And I'm going to call this images. That's going to be all of my images, my bear and the map that I'm going to bring in. Okay, so I have 3 layers. Now, if you want to move the layers around, you can, just like in Photoshop, grab a layer and move it underneath. So now it's type, images, and background. Okay, so I can move any layer wherever I want. You can see that little line come out. Okay, so now my type layer is below the background layer. Just remember that whatever layer is on top will always be on top. So since my type layer is my topmost layer, if I take my type layer and put it over the bear, it's always over the bear. Okay, there's no way that I can make the type go underneath the bear. The reason why is because in my layer stack here, it's always at the top. Okay, but let's get this type layer on the type, let's get this type box on the type layer. And the way you do that is you click on the box and then you click on the layer, okay? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, you click on the box and that selects the box, and then you click on the layer you want it to go to. Now this little dot right here represents what layer this type is currently on. You can see that it's on this background layer. So I'm going to take this little dot and I'm going to click and move it up to my type layer. So now my type box is on the type layer. I'm going to click on this image here, okay, this bear, which is currently on the background layer, and I'm going to move this bear up to my image layer. Okay, so now the bear's box is green. That's how you tell in InDesign what layer your objects are on. You look at the bounding box around that object, and that tells you what layer it's on. Okay, so my type is on the red layer, my image is on the green layer, and then my background, this box, this brown box, and the mauve background is both on the blue layer, which is where I want it. Okay, since I'm not going to be using my background layer at all, I don't want to move it. I'm not going to be moving it in the near future. I'm going to lock it. So right here in between the visibility eye and the layer itself, I'm going to click and you'll see a little lock. Okay, now if I click on this layer and try and move it, okay, I'm clicking my mouse and trying to move, nothing moves because this layer is locked. I can still move my type layer, I can still move my image layer, but I can't move the background layer. So whenever you draw something or lay something down and you know it's not going to move, just lock it, okay? So I'm going to also lock my image layer, the bear layer, because right now I have it in the position I want it and I don't see any reason why I would move it from now. I might move it later, then I can unlock it. But now I'm going to create another type box. And the type box I'm going to create is with the text tool, and I'm going to click and drag a text box underneath this. Now you notice how it became a red type box? That's because I was on this layer. If I was on the image layer and I clicked and dragged with the type tool, it would come out green. And then I'd have to change it to the type layer. So whenever you're using type, make sure you're always on this layer, and then every time you draw a type box, it'll always come out on the right layer. Okay, I've got this type box here, and I'm going to fill it with some placeholder text. So I'm going to go up to type, and I'm going to come down to fill with placeholder text. Okay, and it fills it with just some Latin gibberish here. I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to go to my swatches palette, and I'm going to make it white. I'm going to come up to my point size here, and instead of 12 points, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, 10 points. It's flush left or align left. Okay, so that's fine. And now I'm going to click off. I'm going to tidy up this box a little bit. Kind of move this over a little bit so it flushes off with this text right here. Okay. And now if I hit my W key, that's what I have. Now the last thing I'm going to do is bring in that map. Okay. So I'm going to hit my W key, get my guides back on. I'm going to go to my layers palette here, and the map is going to be on the images layer, right? Because I want it on the same layer as my bear. So I select my image layer, and now I'm going to go up to File Place. That's how we bring in an image, File Place. And I'm going to grab my Yellowstone map, and I'll give this to you also. And I'm going to click Open. Okay. I've got this little pencil here that has a can't place icon on it. Why? Because the layer is locked. I forgot to unlock this image layer. So I have to unlock this image layer, and now I can place my map. Okay. Now if I click and place it, it comes in way too big. Okay, so I'm going to Command Z that, undo. So what I want to do is kind of click and drag a box about the size I want this map to be. So I'm going to start about here, kind of click and drag, and let's say I want my map about that big. When I let go, the map fills that spot. Then I can kind of move it around, place it. If I want it a little bit smaller, I hold my Command and Shift key down, grab the corner, and I can reduce the size of it and reposition it. Okay, all kind of things you can do. I think I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'll scale it up from this bottom corner here. Okay, maybe about there. Hit my W key, and that's what I have so far. Okay, now, last, what I want to do is I want to put that red circle here to show where the bears are in the park. So now, being on my image layer, I'm going to lock my type layer now because I don't want this to move. And I don't want to mistakenly move that. I'm going to open up the image layer. I'm going to come over to my rectangle tool here. And see these little arrows here? If you click and hold on these tools, it tells you what other tools are in this set. And right now there's the ellipse tool, which I want. That's how I'm going to create a circle. So I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and I'm going to magnify in to this area a little bit. And the way you magnify in is you can grab this magnification tool here, but a much faster way is the spacebar and the command key. If you hold those two keys down, or spacebar and control if you're on a PC. Or you can do control plus on your keyboard. Control plus or control minus will zoom you in. Okay, so let's do control plus. I'm going to do command plus because I'm on a Mac. Okay, and as I press that, now I need to kind of scroll over, and another way you can scroll over is by using the scroll bars, or you can use the space bar. Okay, whenever you hit the space bar, your cursor, whatever cursor you're on, whatever tool you're on, always turns into a hand tool. And then hold that down, click, and just kind of move yourself over. All right, so now I've got my map in a, zoomed in. I've got my ellipse tool, and I want to draw a perfect circle. So I'm going to hold down the command and the shift key. Okay, and that's the way you draw either perfect squares or perfect circles. Okay, if I just clicked and dragged, I would draw an oval. You see that oval? But if I hold down the command and shift key, it makes it a perfect circle. I know it's green, it might be kind of hard to see, but okay. So I'm gonna just kind of, I don't know where these brown bears are, so I'm just gonna draw a circle right there, okay, and let it go. Now the reason it came out with a black outline is that's the default. I don't want that. So I'm gonna click on the stroke and make it none. And then I'm gonna click on the fill, and I want this fill to be red. Now red is actually in my swatches palette already. Here's red. So I'm just going to fill it with red. I'm going to click this little red icon, and there it goes. Okay. But the problem is that this icon is, this circle is completely opaque. I can't see through it. So I want to change its opacity, meaning its transparency. So I'm going to go up to my selection tool over here, and up here in the contextual menu, whatever is selected, you'll see you can change the opacity here. Okay, it's kind of a weird place for it to be. And if I click on this arrow here, I can slowly back the opacity down, and you can see now it's starting to get transparent. And I can make that as subtle as I want. All the way over is nothing, and all the way to the right is completely solid. So I'll bring this down to, like, let's say around, I don't know, 25% or so. And that allows you to at least see the map underneath this circle. Okay. And you might have a little legend down here if you wanted to add some more things about how this color represents where the brown bears are in the park. Okay. Anyway, another shortcut key is Command 0. Command 0. That gets you back out in fit in window. So I'll do Command 0, and I'll pop back out so I can see my entire page. I'll hit my W key, and there you go. Okay, that's done. I'm going to click on these. I'm going to open up my layers and unlock all of the layers now. And now I can tweak some things. If I clicked on this type box, and I use my up and down arrow keys, I can kind of slowly bring this up and change that. Sorry about that. I can tweak that. I can tweak the position of this one by kind of moving, inching it up, inching it to the right, inching it to the left, and so forth. You can do all of these tweaks after you set everything up. But that's basically how you would put this together in InDesign. Now, we never save this document. See, it still says untitled, and that's really bad. That's the cardinal sin, is to do all this work and never have saved. So I'm going to save this right now, and for now, I'll save this. I've got to go. So for those of you that have Adobe InDesign, hold off, bear with me. I'm going to do one more lecture on this, but I'm going to build the exact same thing on Monday in Canva. Okay, and I'm going to show you that there's really no difference in how this is going to look. And then once we do that, I'm going to have a formal assignment for all of you to do. And it's going to be very similar to this. I'm going to have you make up several of these kiosks for a zoo or a museum. Okay, so I know that was very fast, but I've got to go, and I will see you guys on Monday. Okay, if you have any questions, just hit me up, please, in the inbox. But otherwise, we're not formally doing anything yet, but play around with this if you do have InDesign. And watch for the video. The video will be up on the Zoom lecture for assignment that you clicked on. So I'll have that video up later this afternoon. Okay, see you guys later.